thanks for spending your Friday with us, or whatever day it is that you're listening. There's nothing better than finding a way to connect with fellow true crime-loving weirdos, and that's precisely why we created our own true crime cult. If you don't know us yet, I'm Angelina, and I'm here with my freaky friend, Aurora. How are things going with you?
I am so good. Much better than last week, and I'm glad my wish for my world to end did not come true. It's amazing how things can get better.
This is true. Just a matter of time sometimes.
Yes. Well, we hope y'all are doing great too. And we hope you know that just because you tune into our show, we consider you an honorary monster. If you'd like to make it official, please join us on Patreon. There you'll get a cool cult title. We'll name one of our adorable baby goats in your honor. And of course, you'll have exclusive access to regular Patreon-only content.
As we mentioned last week, we will be taking a bit of a holiday break after this episode. We'll be back here the first week of January, but if you miss us in our off time, we still will be putting out a Patreon exclusive at the end of December.
There's a lot of content there that you're missing if you're not yet a patron. Just last month, we did a feature on the ins and outs of the insanity plea. For Halloween, we did a look at the real Annabelle doll behind the scary movies. And we've got countless goodies on there, like the survivor story of Alison Botha, some personal brushes with true crime, so many great reasons to join the MMN commune.
And if you only know us from the podcast, you might not realize that this is only the tip of the MMN iceberg. Again, since we'll be off for a few weeks, I want to point you all in the direction of plenty of true crime content to help you bide your time. We hosted a YouTube series called This Week in True Crime, so you can find all of those episodes on YouTube. We're also all over social media, so you can find us on your platform of choice and connect with us there. And of course, where this all started is on our website, MurderMurder.news. And that's where we post new true crime articles every day. And it's sort of a hub where you can find links to everything that we're up to.
Let's start off by taking a look at some of the true crime stories that made headlines this week. The true crime community is all abuzz this week about a possible lead in the Delphi murders. If you're not familiar with the case, 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German were found murdered in a park in Delphi, Indiana on February 14, 2017. The two girls disappeared after spending a day together at the Delphi Historic Trails, and ever since their disappearance, the true crime community has been perplexed by a video the girls managed to get on their phone of the man believed to be the killer, sometimes referred to as the bridge guy, especially in forums where this case is discussed. I know this is one case that has really kept me up at night, and it's so frustrating because there seems to be quite a bit of evidence regarding who could have done this, yet their case remains unsolved. On Monday, the Indiana State Police announced that they are looking for the person behind a social media profile, Anthony_Shots, who used the name between 2016 and 2017, at least on Snapchat and Instagram, possibly others. The owner of the catfish profile used this name while communicating with juvenile females to solicit nude images, obtain their addresses, and attempt to meet them, which is super, super cringe. There have also been theories that whoever killed Abby and Libby had been in contact with them via Snapchat. To my knowledge, that's never been confirmed by police, but I know that is definitely a topic of discussion on Reddit and other places, and this kind of makes it seem like that's a possibility. Investigators would like anyone who communicated with, met, or attempted to meet with Anthony_Shots profile to contact law enforcement at Abby and Libby tip at cacoshrf.com or 765-822-3535.
That one is so interesting. I know this is a case that you're definitely hung up on, and I've been reading some stuff about this recently too, mostly, just web sleuths and online and stuff like that. And apparently the profile Anthony_Shots had used photos, of course, of a real person who was like a male model, but also a law enforcement officer, apparently. Oh. And somebody had told me that person is now dead also. I don't think with any foul play necessarily, but it's just curious.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. I heard that police did not believe that he had anything to do with it, but I did not know that he is no longer alive. That's really bizarre.
Yeah, it's just a little bit weird. Like, I guess it's supposedly not necessarily connected to anything. Nothing suspicious there, but it's just a little off, a little interesting.
Right.
2 missing women from Virginia were found murdered in November and are believed to have been killed by the same man. 54-year-old Elizabeth Beth Redmond had been missing from Harrisonburg since October 24th, and 39-year-old Tanita Larice Nita Smith had been missing since November 19th from Charlottesville. The women were murdered at different times, but were both found on November 23rd in Harrisonburg in an undeveloped lot, within a short distance of each other. 35-year-old Anthony Robinson has been charged in both of their murders, and he's considered a person of interest in a third missing case of a missing woman from Washington, D.C. It's unclear if any of these women are connected or how Anthony may have met them.
Yeah, this one's really interesting because depending on whether or not he knows them, it does sound very serial killery. There's at least 3 women involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it 3 that makes it a serial killer?
It's 3 in separate incidents. So if somebody kills 3 people like within a certain time span, then it's considered a mass killing. And if it's done like separate with time in between, then it's a serial killer.
Huh. Now, before we get into our story, we just want to say that while our tone is light in the intro, we do take the topics we're discussing very seriously. We are best buds, and we love chatting together every week and turning it into a podcast. We want to share that passion with you and to create a vibe where all of you feel like our best buds too. We joke about us friends forming a cult or commune, but that's not to diminish the severity of actual cult activity, which we do occasionally talk about in our weekly stories. We feel it's important to open up and talk about even the darkest aspects of humanity and the downright scary things that come up in the news. But we want to make it clear that our intention is never to sensationalize, and we always try to deliver these stories with respect to all parties involved or affected by the crimes we discuss.
We always post our sources in the episode description, so you can do some digging on your own if a story we present piques your interest. But you should know that if you ever feel we get it wrong, either in our tone or in the details of the case, we want to hear about it. We are more than happy to make a correction or give an update on a case we've discussed in previous episodes. So feel free to reach out to us at MurderMurder.news@gmail.com.
Some specific trigger warnings for this episode include disappearance and verbal abuse. So if either of those are particularly sensitive subjects for you, you may want to skip this one and listen to one of our other episodes instead.
We're going to deviate just a little bit from our true crime history stories because we had a request to cover a missing person case from her best friend. Mary Johhson, who also goes by Mary Davis, is an Indigenous woman from Washington State who has been missing since November 25th, 2020. So we actually just missed the 1-year mark since she first disappeared. I actually wanted to try to squeeze this in for that week, but we didn't quite make that happen. So she has been missing for a year, and her family really needs answers. And our sources for today include HeraldNet, CNN, UIHI.org, Opera News, WAPT, and more. And as always, we'll include a full list of our awesome sources in our show notes. Mary's family has been fighting to get media coverage about her disappearance, and her sisters have spoken publicly about how if Mary was a white woman, her story would be all over the news. Mary's sister told CNN, "If that was a little white girl out there, or a white woman, I'm sure there would be helicopters, airplanes, and dogs and searches, a lot of manpower out there, scouring where that person was lost. None of this has happened for our sister."
If you found our show, you probably already knew about the crisis we have in the U.S. and Canada for missing and murdered Indigenous women. But if not, here are a few statistics that highlight just how many families have been affected and are awaiting answers. According to the Urban Indian Health Institute, over 5,000 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women were reported in 2016. Of those cases, the Department of Justice only logged 116. That's about 2% of the cases actually logged by the police out of all the cases reported. What is happening? It's pretty hard to wrap your mind around that statistic because how in the world are police not logging murders and disappearances? As we recently learned from watching the awesome shows Murdered and Missing in Montana and Black and Missing, cops really do just brush off cases involving people of color. The 3 Indigenous teenage girls covered in Murdered and Missing were all classified by the police as accidental deaths, even though their causes of death could not be explained, and their bodies were mysteriously found over 20 days after their disappearances in plain sight. And often missing women are classified as runaways, even if they're, quote, running away, actually means being lured away by a trafficker, promising them a better life, and then exploiting them instead.
Indigenous women make up 40% of women trafficked in the US, even though they only make up 2% of the population. Washington state has the second highest number of missing Indigenous women in the US. So unfortunately, stories like Mary are way too common, and we're just not hearing about them in the news. But let's get back to Mary's story. Mary was 39 years old at the time of her disappearance from the Tulalip Reservation in Washington and is now 40 years old. Mary is a member of the Tulalip tribes and grew up in foster care with her 3 sisters. Her sister Nona said, quote, "She's spunky, she's lovable, she's a jokester, she's just a good person to be around. She made you laugh if you're sad, she gave you love and hugs when you're sad, she was nice all around to everybody, strangers on the street." Jerry, her younger sister, said she would give you the shirt off her back if you needed it.
We were actually contacted on Facebook about Mary's case from her childhood friend, Carrie. Carrie told us how the 2 met and why it's so important for her to get her friend back.
Well, my name is Carrie, of course. Me and Mary Ellen's been friends since we were 10 years old. So we've been friends for 29 years, almost 30 years. So yeah, we've lived by each other up in Washington State for 7 years, but we've been friends longer. We've always kept in contact with each other, everything. Until last year was the last time I heard from her.
Unfortunately, the media coverage about Mary has been a little vague, and we couldn't find any articles about what she's actually like. We asked Carrie to tell us a little bit more about Mary.
She was mostly into, drawing, art. She loved doing, going out, having fun with friends when we were kids. When we were growing up, we were always there with each other. I mean, we always had fun. Then things changed. I guess she went her different ways. But still, we kept in contact with each other. Her and her sisters was in foster care most of their life. And so when they turned 18 and was able to move out, that's when they got involved with their biological mother and father. Mostly her attitude, if you're always upset or torn apart, anything, she's like always there. She always cheered me up. Like we were always there for each other.
During the interview, Carrie had alluded to some mischief she and Mary would get up to, and we demanded to know more about that.
Well, let's just say either way, it doesn't matter. One of us would get in trouble by our parents for anything, but we always had each other's back. One of us would, take beef for the other one. So it doesn't matter if we were running around in the streets when you're not supposed to or something. So we had a lot of fun.
We know Mary loves dogs, has a good sense of humor, is a hard worker, and that she's known her husband, who we will refer to as Johnson, since 2002. The 2 were married in May of 2016, but Carrie feels like maybe the 2 just weren't a good match. Mary had told a friend that they weren't getting along not long before her disappearance, and it's Carrie's belief that Mary was scared of her husband.
I know she was scared of her husband. They haven't been getting along at all for at least close to 2 years before the missing. And I told her, I said, please come live with me. You're more than welcome to. Back in 2019, I was in California. I said, come on down. You can come stay with me there. So it's been, I don't know what's going on. So I know she was scared of him. He's kicked her out many, many times. Put her on the streets. It's just horrible.
Carrie wasn't exactly sure what their most recent fight had been about, but does think Johhson was verbally abusive to Mary.
All I know is he put a lot of verbal abuse towards her, a lot, because she wanted to live, the life of what she was raised of, a family, but she couldn't have kids. She wanted a happy life, and he was turning around putting her down, saying, she's a loyal piece of, I'm going to watch my language, crud, I'm going to say. Always putting her down, saying she's not worth nothing. And I mean, she worked a lot. She worked at a casino. Last time I knew, she was working at a casino. Her biological father worked at another casino. And I know they always fought. They didn't. I don't even know why they got married. I don't even know why they even were together. Because they butted heads too much over nothing.
Let's look at the timeline of Mary's disappearance. Friends and family have reportedly said that Mary did not seem like herself in the months before her disappearance. Not long before she vanished, Mary and her husband Johhson had been living with her sister Jerry in Cedar-Woolley, Washington. The two suddenly decided to leave Jerry's house and moved 40 miles south to Marysville, which is closer to the Tulalip Reservation. Her sister said she would never answer the phone when she would call and rarely responded to texts. So as an aside, her sisters didn't actually find out Mary was missing for weeks after she was last seen.
On November 24th, Johhson dropped Mary off at a friend's house on the northern edge of the Tulalip Reservation with a suitcase because the two were not getting along. She told a friend that she was worried about Johhson moving to California with all of their belongings. She was worried enough about this that she went to the Tulalip Tribal Court to get legal advice. Once there, she spoke to a security guard in the lobby, but there were no attorneys available at the time. Mary made plans to stay with another friend in a house near Oso. On November 25th, the man who she was staying with told her that he would drive her and another man to a nearby church. And from there, a third friend would drive her and the second man to Oso. According to the driver, Mary and the man he was giving a ride to were being impatient about getting to the church. So he told the second man to get out of his truck. Mary and this man ended up getting out of the truck and walking along Fire Trail Road around 1:30 p.m. towards the church.
When the driver got to the church, Mary wasn't there yet. He texted Mary to let her know he had a lot of stuff in his car and he only had room for one passenger. At 1:52 p.m., Mary texted to let him know she was almost to the church. Mary never arrived at the church, and according to her phone records, that's the last text she sent. According to her friend she was walking with, the two of them parted ways on the way to the church, and he went to another friend's house instead. Mary did call the couple she was going to visit near Oso and left them what they described as a desperate voicemail asking them to pick up the phone. Around 2:30, Mary tried calling another friend who did pick up, but told Mary she was too busy to talk.
Ugh.
I know. Oh, so I can only imagine that's one of those big regrets,
Yeah, things you're always thinking back to.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be a bad feeling.
About an hour later, Mary's phone connected to a cell phone tower near Oso, and police have mentioned that Mary could not have walked the 25 miles between the church and Oso in that amount of time. Obviously, that's just too far to go. So police believe Mary was picked up in a car for this reason. We do want to mention it's also possible someone just had her phone with them as well. She could have been robbed, something could have happened. It's possible she wasn't also transported to Oso.
It's only clear that her phone was there. Yeah.
Right.
Mary's phone then went offline until later that evening when it connected to a tower in the greater Marysville Tulalip area. It remained in that location until the next morning and then was eventually turned off or died. Mary has not been heard from since, and as we mentioned earlier, her sisters weren't often in contact with her because she wasn't the best at returning messages. They had no idea Mary was missing until December 9th, when her husband reported her missing. That's right, Johhson took 2 whole weeks to report his wife missing. And he told the police they were usually in contact every other day. He said he had become increasingly worried about her after she hadn't collected her tribal welfare check. Mary's sisters have publicly spoken about the lack of progress and communication from police from day one after Mary was finally reported missing.
There has been little movement in the investigation, but Tulalip Tribal Police Department Detective David Solly has recently said her case remains, quote, open and active. He said the police department has identified multiple persons of interest, though it has not yet made an arrest. He has mentioned that a body hasn't been recovered, so it's difficult to establish probable cause to seek search warrants. According to CNN, because Mary's disappearance was reported weeks after the fact, surveillance footage or precise location information that could offer clues has likely been, unfortunately, overwritten.
Oh,
I know, such a bummer.
mm.
We do want to talk a bit about what could have happened to Mary, because this could possibly trigger a memory for a listener or a friend of a listener as to what happened on November 25th, 2020. Police have not officially named Johhson, her husband, as a person of interest, but we also know police do not name a person as a person of interest unless they have probable cause to do so. So it takes quite a bit for them to say that. Does not mean they're not looking at the person.
Yeah, I think sometimes they also don't want to scare them away, you know?
Exactly, right. And also, like it can be very damaging when somebody is named, by the media person of interest, and then people go after them and
they're not involved.
Yeah, it can be really
Yeah,
dangerous.
that's
We
terrible.
definitely don't want to say that, but it does sound like they were for sure having problems in their marriage. But for Carrie, she's not exactly sure where Mary could be, but she does believe there's a possibility he was involved based on the pattern of verbal abuse and the fact that he didn't seem worried that he hadn't heard from his wife in 2 weeks.
I hate saying this, but I'm afraid she was probably kidnapped. Hear that? Or Johhson did something to her. That's what I'm afraid of. And I'm hoping not.
Mary's sisters are also uncertain about what happened to Mary, but they think there's a chance that she could have been kidnapped for trafficking. As we mentioned earlier, Indigenous women account for 40% of women trafficked in the U.S., and it's certainly possible someone spotted her alone on the side of the road and kidnapped her. Police investigating her case have also mentioned there's a possibility she ran away or just got lost in the woods. But to us, that kind of sounds like an excuse to not take Mary's disappearance seriously. Please help us bring Mary home.
I just want Mary home. That's all we want. If Mary's out there somewhere, please come home. That's all we ask is everybody please share.
The FBI has issued a reward of up to $10,000 for information leading to the identification, arrest, and conviction of persons responsible for the disappearance of Mary Johhson. If you have any information about her disappearance, please submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. A special thank you to Carrie for reaching out to us and for the work you're doing for your friend. So, have you been watching anything crimey?
The only thing I have watched that's crimey is Black and Missing on HBO, which I mentioned on our TikTok from last weekend and which we mentioned in this episode, which, wow, it's amazing. It's so well done. It's so well edited. It's so engaging. It's just like everybody that they interview, you just care about so much, like you can't not watch it and have so much empathy for these poor families. And gosh, like just the editing on it is just really extraordinary for a true crime show. Like they're telling like the mini stories of people who are missing, and some of them we've covered in our TikTok actually, which maybe I unknowingly found from the organization Black and Missing. But like, so they're telling those little stories, but then they kind of have like an overarching story too that This man is telling about his sister who came up missing, and like he knows he was murdered by her like boyfriend at the time, and there's like security footage and whatever, and they string you along with that one too, and like they're like getting to like the point where like maybe there's gonna be arrest, and then they switch to another story, and you're like, I want to hear more of that. Like it's so engaging.
Real
it's so clever.
Yeah.
Yes, but like so well done. So it's
cool.
really wonderful. Definitely go check that out on HBO. It's my favorite thing I've watched in a while.
And it's really cool to learn about the organization, the Black and Missing Foundation too. Because like you said, we even since you posted that video about watching the show, we posted a missing person that is being assisted by Black and Missing Foundation. So that's really cool.
They do great work. Definitely go find them on social media. Their Instagram, I know they're extremely active on. You know, we're not as active on other social media, so I'm not, you know, I can't like, you know,
you can't speak for their TikTok or whatever.
I know that their Instagram is very well done, and they do a good job of listing updates too when people have been found, whether good or bad, like if they're found safe or if something happened to them. So it's nice because sometimes it can be hard to track that, you know, like we're not great at posting updates because, you know, we just lose track of stories and stuff, but like they are a funded, well-run organization.
You definitely want to watch that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're amazing.
Awesome. I haven't watched anything necessarily true crimey. The closest thing that I watched was the movie American Anarchist, which is about the book, The Anarchist Cookbook, and its writer, William Powell, who was 19 when he wrote it. And it's interesting because, of course, this ties into a number of true crime cases, especially, you know, school shootings, particularly Columbine.
Right.
So it's interesting to see what the writer thinks about how these kids received the info in his book and used it. And, you know, whether he regrets writing the book. It's also interesting to find that him and his wife have done so much good since then, since being, you know, adults. They are actually both educators now, and they focus specifically on kids who learn differently, you know, with ADHD or any kind of learning disability or developmental disability. So that's really cool to see them focusing on that and, you know, hearing out those kids and giving them, you know, the attention that they want but don't receive from ordinary educators usually. So that's really cool.
Right.
And the other thing I watched is ridiculous fiction, but kind of spooky. It's a movie called The Cleanse, which is a few years old, I think, but it just popped up on, I think it was Netflix for me. And the big name in this one is Angelica Houston, who is a delightful weirdo as per usual.
Right.
And it's just like a little bit, it's a bit of a literal jab at what it might be like to oust your personal demons and fight your personal demons. So it's an interesting sort of, I think a lot of people have been playing with this trope lately, the sort of retreat that is supposed to better your life, but has some dark secrets. And this is another fun one like that. So.
I love that. That sounds interesting. I'll have to check that out. And I love it when things are on Netflix because I have access to that.
Yeah, that's easy.
I had to like work for some of these other shows.
Yeah. What the heck? They're all over the place these days.
Yeah. I'm also reading The Shining right now.
Oh, are you? Yeah. I don't even know if I've read The Shining, actually. Do you find it's a lot different than the movie?
It's definitely quite a bit different than my recollections of the movie, which I haven't seen in a very long time. Like the last time I saw The Shining, I think I was in high school, and it's just so deeply terrifying. Like it was so terrifying to me. Like I've always had a fear of the concept of family annihilators. And ever since I had heard about like the Vasilla not the Vasilla axe murders, it's the there's another one, John List, maybe? I forget.
List,
yeah. And like I remember seeing that as a kid on some like haunted house like kind of thing, and just really being deeply terrified of my father.
Oh yeah.
Like for no good reason. He's not violent. Like he's a very kind, gentle man.
You're just like, can any father snap? Probably.
That's exactly it. Like, it really freaked me out. And it's like seeing that movie when I was in high school just sort of reinstated that fear for me.
Yeah.
And
especially just the isolation.
Yeah.
Just like if something like that happens and there's no one to turn to for help because you're staying out in the middle of nowhere in the winter, you know?
Yeah. And like also just like being that isolated as an extrovert.
Yeah.
Sounds like my worst
it's a
nightmare.
horror story on its own. Yes.
Enough of a horror story for me.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I don't like, you know, I remember obviously like the key points in The Shining, but I'm sure there's tons of little details that I don't remember, and I'm not sure how they're portrayed in the movie versus the book about the kid Danny's, about his shining, about his extra sense. And so they really go deeper into that in the book than what I recall them doing in the movie. And they spend more time with Jack, the dad, like showing his kind of like haunted past of having like a little bit of anger issues, which I don't remember them alluding to quite so much in the movie, but it's, you know, it's really long. I'm listening to an audio and it's like 15 hours. So of course it's going to be a lot more than a 2-hour film, like to, you know, like adapt it to.
They can fit a lot more info in there.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm probably like a quarter of the way through at this point, and there's nothing like truly terrifying yet, but I feel like it's going to go off the rails soon.
It's going to hit you all at once.
Yeah. I might regret this.
Just don't listen too late.
No.
I also feel like mentioning that our friends, because we had, you know, recently the book club for I Know What You Did Last Summer by Lois Duncan, which of course was then made into a movie and a TV show, and it has this whole thing. So some of our friends had dug a little bit deeper and found actually that Lois Duncan's daughter was murdered, and that was a cold case for a very long time. And apparently Lois Duncan wrote a true crime book about her daughter's murder as well. So like that, for any of you that are still kind of lingering in the realm of I Know What You Did Last Summer, you might want to check that out too.
Yeah. And thanks, Fanny, number one Fanny, for sending us that message, because I did not know that. And I was, you know, a reasonably big Lois Duncan fan when I was younger. Like I can't remember what all books she wrote, but I remember reading quite a few of them when I was like in junior high, and I never knew that about her.
Yeah. So that's there's always something, I guess, to dig deeper into.
Yeah.
There's always more to the story.
Well, I think it's time for a pup date.
Yeah. Let's have your pup date. We're living for these pup dates.
Yeah. So last week, why I was having such a hard week is our landlord found out that we were hiding 6 dogs in our apartment, and reasonably so was not happy with us. And I guess one of our neighbors who hates dogs reported the noise. And I think that what had happened was we were working with the mom who we've rebranded from Cleo to Moira after Moira Rose.
So perfect.
She's now Moira, and we will definitely get her fabulous outfits and hats and all kinds of ridiculous
things. Oh my God, get her doggy wigs.
But so I think what they had heard was we, you know, occasionally have to leave her alone, which is not often. Like, I'm home most of the time, especially in pandemic world. And we were trying to do like a crate thing because she's not potty trained, and yet we're working on that too. And she's has separation anxiety, so she just like rips through things in our apartment if we like leave her alone for 5 minutes. So we were trying to do like a crate thing, and I hadn't like taken the time to get her comfortable in the crates, which I've since learned how to do online. Thank you, YouTube. So she was losing her mind when we would go, and she was barking and howling, and Sebastian, our Pomeranian, was probably too, like from hearing
He's getting
her,
upset by all the noise, and just everyone starts yelling.
Right. So I think that's what our neighbors heard, and I can, you know, of course, understand why that would be obnoxious to somebody. So our landlord the day that we recorded last week said, "You have to go, or the dogs do." Or the dog, he only knows that we have one more. And so we were just freaking out and like contacting the rescue to see if they could find somebody else to take them immediately. And the rescue is like, "We don't have anybody. You're going to have to take them to the shelter and they're going to die." I'm like,
that's
not
heartbreaking.
an option.
Heartbreaking. Yeah.
And like, I totally get it. Like the rescue, it just, they're overwhelmed. They're trying to get as many dogs back to the UK to safety
They don't have
before
the
the holidays
capacity
right now. And like,
have
because they
them
won't be
all.
able,
Yeah.
exactly. So there was no option to transport these dogs because, like you're saying, they don't have the rabies vaccines. They can't enter the UK. So we were just frantically trying to figure out what we could do to save these dogs' lives again. And so we found a temporary foster place that they went to for one night. And then they were like, absolutely not. We can't do this. These dogs are too much, and having 4 puppies and a mom who's severely traumatized and, going to the bathroom everywhere, it was just too much for them, which is also understandable.
Yeah.
So we have since talked our landlord down, and he said as long as the mama, Moira, is quiet, that we are fine keeping them. He does not know about all the puppies, but they're quiet and they're quite easy now that we kind of have a cycle worked out for them.
Yeah,
So,
it's really just the first couple of weeks where it's like they really get, they're adjusting. They're having struggles. Yeah.
Yeah. And, basically all the puppies do is like they eat every 4 hours and then they sleep for the rest of that time. So they're only they only make noises if we wait too long to feed them and they start to wake up. But like, as long as I'm keeping them on their cycle, like they wake up, they eat, they poop, they play, they go to sleep for the next 4 hours, repeat. And it's like, they're actually quite easy. It's taking up a lot of my time, but like now that I have my schedule for them, they're quite easy. And we will definitely post some new videos because they're starting to like look and act like real dogs and less like hamsters. And they play and like they like bite at the hem of my pants and like they have little toys now and they like wrestle with each other.
Oh, so cute. We need a video of puppy wrestling. That's really, really, really cute.
Definitely videos of puppy wrestling. And then my husband did some like cute portraits of them over the weekend too, especially when we thought that they were going away and we might not see them again. We did like really cute portraits. So we have some like fresh, beautiful photos of them that we will post. But now it looks like we're going to keep the mom, Moira, maybe forever, and one of the puppies, Gomez, maybe forever. We're trying to figure out a way to make it work.
And you're taking another tact with like anyone that you want to bring into the situation to help out the puppies, which I think is brilliant and going to work much better. Like when you were saying how if you're out for a couple days over the holidays, you're going to have a dog sitter come in. Yeah. And I loved how you were saying that you just wrote, here's what you're up against, utter chaos, a million like screaming puppies and blah, blah, blah. So like whatever they come into, it's going to be less than they anticipated. So there's not going to be any unpleasant surprises or please take these puppies back.
Like they still might not know how bad it might be for them, but like I definitely prepped our poor pet setter, like with your life is going to be terrible. You will not sleep for a minute. They're going to pee all over everything you own. They will poop on everything you own. Like you will be covered in dog feces and
you definitely
you're going to hate it. You're going to hate me and it's going to be awful, but we're going to pay you whatever you want. Name your price and I will bake you vegan Christmas cookies and lavishly paid you. And like she came with a price that was incredibly low for me being an American. And I think, like is for like a student here in Hungary is maybe like a good wage. I'm not quite sure. I'm also not good at the exchange monetization rate here. It's like it's the foreign is like $300 to $1 or something. It's like the math is always a little confusing for me.
That is confusing.
But I was like, that does not sound like enough for your life to be completely upside down. We will double it and then some. Like this is going to be worse than you think.
Yeah. That's an interesting aspect of how like things are cheaper there too, I guess, It's like one of those things where you're like, wait a minute, how are you really going to like, put up with all of this puppy shenanigans and like actually feel well paid about it, like having a good sort of reward for it. And yeah, I guess the standard is maybe not good enough in your area.
Yeah. It's interesting because I do think that Hungary is one of those places that maybe the cost of living compared to income is quite good.
Okay.
And, I I don't quite know what wages are and such, but I've seen the city as having like a high quality of life and like listings. And also I have a couple friends who are in their 20s who have their own apartments in Budapest living by themselves in their 20s.
I barely know people in their 40s living by themselves. It's like impossible in North America.
Yeah.
So I know
not possible.
40-somethings with roommates. So yeah,
Right.
this is that is astounding to me.
Yeah, it's pretty great. From what I understand, I don't think that my friends are like particularly like coming from wealthy families or whatever. Right. Maybe they are, and I just don't know. Maybe I'm friends with some rich bitches. Maybe they should be buying me dinner. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think the quality of life is pretty good here. So if you are looking for an international move, I cannot say enough good things about Budapest. Yeah, it's a great city.
Awesome.
Their prime minister is trash, and he is very transphobic. But so
well, that's not
I'm
great.
very sorry to report that. But most people, I think, living in Budapest are quite liberal-minded for Eastern Europe, and it's a beautiful place.
So they're working on it. Hopefully the next prime minister won't be so ignorant.
Yeah, and they do have elections coming up, and it sounds like a lot of people are unhappy with him. So hopefully they do something about that.
Get out of here. Well, I guess that's enough murder for 1 week. But don't worry, if you need more, you can always find us on the OG MurderMurder.news for the latest breaking true crime news stories every day of the week.
You can also find us on Instagram at MurderMurder.news, on Twitter at MurderNews, with CJ from Beyond the Rainbow has told me I must be more active on. I've been snoozing on that one. And she
do
let
a
me
few
know.
more tweets.
I need to respond more. So sorry if you've been ignored there. We are also on TikTok at MurderMurder.news, where our video about missing person, Shakira Cotton, really could use some more views to help spread the word. So please go check that out. We're also on Facebook, where you can just find our page by searching for Murder Murder News.
And while you're searching for Murder Murder News on Facebook, you'll see our group also pops up, and you will want to join that group if you want to chat about the latest in true crime with your favorite podcast hosts. We'll still be hanging out there during our holiday break. And also, you'll want to be there to stay in the loop about upcoming virtual events. We're still gearing up to nominate and vote on some titles for our book club. So if you have any books that you'd like to nominate, or if you want to be there to cast your vote, you're going to want to make sure that you're in our Facebook group.
And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Thank you.
Please, please, please. We'll read it on air. We still didn't get any this past week, and I thought my plea was incredibly desperate and pathetic. So maybe if we just
maybe a little too pathetic.
Maybe I was too pathetic.
We don't need your reviews. We'd rather that you just don't tell us what you think.
We don't even like your reviews. We won't even read them.
Yeah, that we're not impacted by this at all. So don't bother. See how that works. So have an amazing holiday season, whatever you celebrate, and cheers to any of you who like to mix a little spooky into your holiday season just like we do. See you all in January.
And don't forget, if you want more of us, come check out our December Patreon, where we'll do some Christmas crimes.
See you there.
Bye, friends.
Bye.